Hey everybody, I am Samuel Stevens. I'm the Fremont campus pastor here at Stonebridge, and this is the Chaos Dragons podcast. We're going to be having extended conversations on mental health. I'm back from last week, if you remember, and if you missed that one, go ahead and click back and watch that. Me and my brother-in-law, Patrick, got to talk about for almost an hour, which is crazy, but it was so much fun. And today, I'm joined with Cady Riemann.
Hello.
How are you, Cady?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. Cady, you...
Just a little anxious.
Just a little anxious. Oh my gosh. How perfect. That's what we're talking about today.
I planned it just for you guys.
Oh, good.
I said,
Cady,
Lord, give me all the anxiety this morning.
That's really healthy.
It's exactly
so,
how
Cady,
that went.
You and Chloe are really good friends.
We are good friends.
And we're good friends. Chloe's my wife. Cady and my wife are really good friends. We office together. We're good friends.
Sometimes.
You do... Sometimes what?
Sometimes we're good friends, Samuel and I.
I have that effect on people. But you do so much for our church. Like, you're the backbone of so much that goes on discipleship-wise at our church. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you do here and what your role is at Stonebridge for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so I am the Connections Pastor, which is actually a new role for me. I started 2.5 years ago-ish now, just cleaning and taking care of the Omaha campus, the other campuses as needed. And then I started a residency with Lindsay on the multi-site and discipleship team. So I was able to learn from Lindsay and other people on the team for 2 years, and boy, was that helpful. And
Super.
I needed that, and I was really grateful. And so now here I am, the Connections Pastor, and I'd like to say that I'm still in training.
But we take on residents. That's something cool we do. And the resident program is like 2 years.
Mm-hmm. 2 good years. You need both years.
And it's like 2 years of like ministry practice, would you say?
Mm-hmm.
And
coaching, developing, you can make mistakes, and they are so much grace is given. So.
Yeah, and you even grew into like a lot of the things that you're doing now as the Connections Pastor.
Yes.
And then they were
absolutely.
like, hey, you should work for us full time. Residency over, full employee.
Yes.
Which is fun.
So fun.
So
I love
fun.
it.
That's awesome. Well, we're here to talk about something important, anxiety, like you already mentioned. It's going to be awesome. Our church is in the middle of a mental health series that has been cool to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Pastor Mark is doing such a good job.
Yeah.
I can't believe how vulnerable and honest he is, which somehow it's like a paradox. The more vulnerable you are, the stronger you sound, which I think is really cool. I admire a lot as he talks about things he's struggled with and where he's been. So just a sidebar, we said this last week, I'll say it again this week, but this is just a helpful conversation, hopefully to get rid of any stigma. Mental health is just something that people struggle with, especially today. It seems to be really prevalent. So we're just going to have a conversation about our experiences, and that's all, because we're not professionals, we're not counselors. There are professionals and counselors. We have a page for that if that's something you need, or medical intervention, any of those things. We have great resources on our website. But in the meantime, we're going to have a conversation about our experience and some of the things we've lived through. So why don't we start there? We'll just start there. Why don't you talk a little bit about what your struggle with mental health has looked like? Where did that start for you?
Yeah, so I don't think I realized it when I was a wee little girl. But I definitely think that looking back on my past, that's absolutely where, like, my first core memory of anxiety was being at my Christian preschool. And I don't know if it was like a graduation or a Christmas program or whatever, but all the kids are lined up on stage. And I just remember the room was filled with parents and grandparents and adults and just staring at everybody. Or in my head, my poor little preschool head, everybody was staring at me. And so I was mortified, and I just sat down and I just started crying. And one of the teachers had to come pull me off the stage, and my parents didn't actually even they didn't know where I went. They were like, where did Cady go?
Interesting.
And so that is like the first core memory that I remember of just being like mortified and overcome with anxiety of just this, like, socially I am everybody's point of focus.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm guessing it didn't just go from elementary school performance, recital, whatever, to I need a doctor. What was some of the middle ground? Like, how did that develop in your life?
Yeah, I think for myself, it was very clearly around like how other people viewed me, and anytime I would have to do public speaking, and like this, for instance, while not public speaking, I know people will see this and hear it, and it's
privately public speaking.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's a little anxiety producing, but that's okay. I'm in a different spot now. Anyway, so I think that's primarily where that would show up, you know, having to give presentations for school. Like the second that I would see that, like I remember in high school, teachers would give you options for like projects. And if that was an option, that was the first thing checked. Like I would not do that. That was a hard no. If I had to do it, I would be riddled with anxiety from the day that I hear about it until I have to do it. And I know that that's a normal thing, that a lot of people are nervous about public speaking, but it would be like physically ill, shaking, nauseous, not feeling good. Just because I didn't want to get up there, I was, I think, more subconsciously just so terrified of what people would think about me. I'd sit in the back of the classroom in high school when we didn't have assigned seats anymore. Not because I was a bad kid, but because I wanted nobody to look at me. I wanted nobody to pay attention to me. I wanted to hide.
So what I hear you saying is you had a struggle with anxiety, and there were some trigger points like pressure, probably pressure, expectations, social anxiety, social 100%. Pressure.
Yep.
If anyone had eyes on you, stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I couldn't necessarily give you many other specific examples throughout.
No, that's great.
Elementary, high school, but yeah.
At what point, or was there a moment, or was there a period of time where you were like, this is probably out of control. This is probably affecting me way more than it needs to. I need help. I just can't do this on my own. I need help.
Yeah, I think in high school, I started to realize that. I had a thing for a boy. That didn't go well, which is fine. 25-year-old Cady is so happy about that.
It's fine. I promise, it's fine.
Cady's sophomore year was devastated. But
Love is hard when you're 16.
So hard.
So hard.
But I remember like the amount of anxiety that I had with that, and like just walking through the hallways, I was so anxious and so overwhelmed that I would see this guy, and just so nervous that getting up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the class, he would just so happen to get up as well. And I remember like just thinking, this is ridiculous. Like I can't sleep. I am physically not feeling well. I feel sick. And just like, yeah, I knew something was weird. Like this can't be normal. I haven't, and it wasn't a heartbreak, but it was just a bummer my sophomore year of high school. But it made me so nervous and so anxious of what would encountering him lead to. And so, I think that was the start of that. And I think I remember mentioning something to my dad and my mom and just saying like, I think maybe I should go see a counselor. Like I would love to talk through these things.
So that was your idea?
It was.
In high school?
Yeah. Yeah. And, my parents are super supportive. They just were not as supportive in that exact moment as I would have needed them to be.
Oh, interesting. What was, I got to see a video of your dad talking.
Yeah.
That you showed me. That was really cool.
Yeah.
He's a really good man.
Yeah, he is.
Which is awesome.
He is awesome.
In that moment where it's interesting that you caught that, what was their response when you shared with them that you were struggling?
So I very clearly remember my dad saying something along the lines of, oh, you're just nervous. And I did not tell them this situation with this boy because that's so embarrassing in high school. And it really was such a little thing.
Did they know about your boyfriend?
I think they had, it wasn't a boyfriend, but it was a little,
you liked each other.
A little thing.
That's so funny. High school, man. That's so funny.
Anyway, so my dad had just kind of said, well, I think you're just nervous. Because I think the way that maybe I had described it or maybe even downplayed it to my parents was that's how it came across. And I'm sure even being a parent now myself, you just hope and pray that you want your child to grow up and be perfect. Realistically, we know that's not the case because I'm definitely far from that. But I think there's... Go ahead.
I shared last week too. Sometimes when I would talk to my dad about stuff, his response was, well, everybody's sad sometimes.
Yeah. Yep.
there just seemed to be a disconnect between what I was feeling and what he was hearing at that time.
Yes, 100%.
And it's interesting because as a parent, I have a 2.5-year-old. So only 2.5 years of experience. But my little boy, part of being his dad means helping him to regulate what is an appropriate level of emotion to feel. Like, if your sister touches your toy, probably not enough reason to punch her in the face, Like, it's good to balance that out. But so I understand that line of thinking where, like, people feel sad sometimes, and sometimes we feel really sad.
Yeah.
And it's not, I guess, as a parent, that's got to be a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
Like, when do I get help? And probably when your kid asks for it.
Yeah, because I think from my dad's perspective, it's how can I help my children process these things? And my dad actually, as I reflect back on that, was such a great father when it came to like helping us process emotionally.
I bet.
And so that was really helpful. Except I think he just didn't realize how significant it actually was. And when you're not feeling what I'm feeling and when you're not experiencing what I'm experiencing, I don't know how to make you understand that. And so I just kind of left discouraged from that conversation.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until college, actually, I was going to a college group called CSF, Christian Student Fellowship.
CSF, what does that stand for?
Christian Student Fellowship.
Christian Student Fellowship. Got it.
Anyway, and he's no longer there, and I think Mark actually knows him, but Dan Walter was leading the Omaha UNO branch, if that's what you want to call it, at the time, and he had actually given a message one evening about his anxiety and the counseling that he received and the medicine that he actually took for that. And everything he was describing, I just was sitting there anxious, because for some reason when you talk about anxiety, you get anxious. As I am right now, anyway. Sure. But I just was like, this is exactly what I'm going through. And Dan, who is maybe about my dad's age or a little bit younger, is telling me that he goes through the same thing and takes medicine for it and sees a counselor. And he is a positive person that I have now associated this with, that I can talk to.
When you were in college?
When I was in college, yeah. And so I had went up and talked to him afterwards, and I was like, Dan,
Just to track real quick.
Yeah.
In high school, you started seeing a counselor?
No, in high school, I reached out to my parents. I think it was probably junior or senior year.
So then in
Parents
college...
said, nope.
Let's talk through this.
Everybody's nervous.
Right. So in high school, you brought it up, and then that didn't go anywhere at the time.
Yeah.
And now there's Dan Walters.
Walter,
yeah. And he's talking. Sorry. So
nope,
go ahead.
You're good. Yeah, so I just went up to him afterwards, and I said, Dan, I think I'm going through all of that. And I think I have my entire life. I think that's when everything kind of clicked, that this is just something that I've always experienced. And he was so supportive. And I kind of told him how my parents had received it. And he said, you know what, we're going to do everything we can to help you be able to get what you need. Even if we have to help pay for something, like we're going to be able to get you that next step. And actually it worked out really well, because I think I ended up getting the confidence to talk to my parents again.
Yeah.
And then we actually ended up getting me to a counselor, and a really great counselor too. Like, I'm so grateful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how when you're in a bout of anxiety, if you want to call it that, something as small as a boy saying he doesn't like you anymore can be devastating.
Yeah.
And like, maybe it is an unbalanced response, but I'm anxious. I can't help that. And
everything in high school is unbalanced.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yes.
That's crazy. So counselor helped.
Yeah. She was amazing. And actually within like our first 3 or 4 sessions, maybe, she had actually suggested medication. Yeah. Which made me even more anxious. Not because I'm this young, almost 20-something, and so I'm like, I'll do anything that will help. But I was more so nervous about how my parents were going to respond.
Oh, because it didn't
they were
go so well.
Nervous about counseling. Yeah. How much more are they going to be like, you don't need drugs to fix this.
Drugs are for
you
the
just
devil.
need to put this little Bible verse Band-Aid on. And I love my mom. She's great, but she is really good at those
Live,
Bible
laugh,
verse
love.
Band-Aids
in your car and you'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are great. Bible verses are great, but
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I think what I realized is that there was just a little bit more to my mental health journey, and I did end up getting on medication, and I have been since. And
so you're in college here.
In this situation,
in this time period, you see a counselor.
See a counselor.
Counselor recommends meds.
Yep.
And that goes very well. How long do you think it took you to start hitting an upswing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. Just actually. Gradually. It was definitely a gradual thing. Yeah. It was not an instant thing. I think I kind of hoped that like the next day after I took my first anxiety medicine, I would be like, oh my gosh, I feel so great. Is this what it's like to not be anxious all the time? And that's just not how it went. And that's okay. Because I think the medication was such a good tool that once it started to regulate my brain and the chemicals a little bit, that I was able to start actually utilizing those tools that my counselor would give me. So.
Oh, nice. So you were getting these tools, and then you got prescribed medication, and then once that started kicking in, the tools were more impactful. Yeah,
because I felt like I was at a place that I could actually calm down.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think
to actually want to use and be mindful to use the tools.
Yeah. I think I said something similar in our conversation. That's interesting. That's very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And my medicine journey took a couple months to start to kick in too. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't want to give any false hope that it's like this instantaneous thing. Like, you just have to give it a try. And I even have friends that you try a medication and it's just not the right fit. And so you have to see a psychiatrist, see your doctor, and make sure that they help hear your story, hear the things that are going wrong to find that right fit for you.
Yeah.
And medicine isn't for everybody, but.
So tell me what it's been like. So you're in college, you see a counselor, you get on some meds, start to use some tools, and there's a gradual improvement. And so from there to today, what's it been like? How have you grown out of that position, and what's it like today?
Yeah. Great. Like, I am just grateful for the things that I'm grateful for the ways that God has gifted people to be counselors and to be doctors that have come up with this medicine to be able to help me to function. If I can tell one more story,
yeah,
I
please.
remember being in college. I don't even remember what year I was, but we had a horrible snowstorm in Omaha. And I was driving home from UNO, and I was going up 72nd, heading towards the interstate. And it's this really big hill, and I had not had much experience driving in the snow. And so here I am.
Let alone on big hills.
Let alone on big hills. And so I was just super nervous already, because I am just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like, everybody behind me is gonna hate me if I can't get up this hill. And so I'm just pushing on the gas, and my wheels are just spinning in place, and all I can think about is these people are so mad at me. They are so mad at me. And I was just embarrassed, and I was humiliated, and I'm bawling. And I remember having to pull over, and I called my dad, and he came and met me in this parking lot. I mean, I think I sat in that parking lot for over an hour waiting for my dad, because I think he had a meeting or whatever. And I'm just crying, and I'm so anxious, and I'm nervous, and I'm humiliated.
From having trouble getting up the hill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. Absolutely.
And it was just this terrible, terrible thing, because I couldn't take a second to calm down and logically say, these people literally don't care about you.
Yeah.
They just also want to go. And once you can calm down to gain control of your car and get up the hill, it will be fine. Yeah. And so all of that to say, now, if that situation was to happen when I have more experience driving in the snow.
And up hills.
Two
good things.
That I have more ability to control my car, but I reasonably say, just like anybody else, they'll be patient. Like,
they'll be fine.
They'll be fine.
Okay.
They'll get where they need to go eventually. We're all remembering how to drive in the snow. Whatever it is, every time it snows.
Don't get ready, stay ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember that.
But all of that to say, I think once I got medication, I didn't stop going to counseling.
Yeah.
I continued to go to counseling. There was a lot of things I needed to work through. There's probably always things that I still have to work through. I still see a counselor when I need to today, because it's just helpful to process through with somebody. And with somebody who is a Christian counselor that will give me godly wisdom, but also will give me tools to be able to say, hey, yeah, you can't just say this Bible verse and magically everything will be okay. But with scripture and these tools to breathe and to be aware of your surroundings and like, actually, have you even eaten anything recently? You know, those types of things, like all of those have been helpful.
Accusing you of being hangry.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, 100%, which is so fair and
Snickers.
so true. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between what you and your counselor talked about? How long ago was that when you first started? How long's it been?
That was middle of college.
If you were to say
like 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between what you and your counselor talked about 5 or 6 years ago versus what you guys talk about today? Is it different? Is it the same stuff?
Yeah. Well, it's different. I mean, I definitely don't think I bring up my anxiety as much because I have much more control over it now, I feel like. I think the medication and the tools, again, have all been really helpful to just stabilize things and help me feel like I can just live my life. And I even think probably a little bit life experience just helps. The more you get older and grow up and experience things, that helps as well. But I don't find myself getting as anxious anymore. Until you ask me to do a podcast. Or
right. And then it's like, what people. Tools? Where are they?
Yeah.
I lost
just
them.
A crazy panic.
You're great. This is great.
No, but
I can't even tell you're anxious until you bring it up.
Great.
It's great.
That's so glad. That
took good.
Yeah, so good. That took 25 years of practice.
Congratulations.
So I hope I can hide it. No.
I hope I can imitate a sane person.
I'm just kidding.
How do you, like today, when you think of who you are in God's eyes, how do you see yourself? And how has that changed? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I think I definitely saw myself as broken. Now,
interesting.
We all are, really. Like, we need Jesus. But at the same time, like, I think I saw it as, like, a different level of, like, I knew that I wasn't too far gone, but I also think I was like, well, I feel like there's something wrong with me. Then, did you say the same thing?
I did say that. I used those words. Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, I just didn't, it's not like my friends growing up running around the neighborhood were saying, I'm anxious too.
Right.
Like, it's just not casual conversation, I suppose. And I think whether you realize it or not, you're nervous to talk about those things with people because you just don't know how it'll be received, especially if you've been received not how you want to be before.
Especially when you're scared of what people think about you.
100%.
Like,
yeah,
I have anxiety because of what people think about me. So why would I tell them I'm anxious? Because that'll mess with what they think about me.
Yeah, they'll think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I realized, despite my anxiety, and I remember too, in college, talking to a good mentor of mine and just friend, she was like, have you tried praying and asking God to heal you from this? He might not, but he could. And I was like, in my head, I think at the time I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, like, I knew, I knew that was true. I guess I just didn't maybe believe it as much in my heart. But I still prayed it, and I still hoped that would be the case because I knew he could. And it just never happened, and that's okay. Like, I think I was able to, like, reconcile that a little bit for myself, or at least allow God to be able to, like, see how I can use that to help other people and to also, like, just be able to glorify him in that, even
to land on that point. I won't lean back. To land on that point, I certainly think God absolutely can take away anxiousness.
Yeah,
and he can
100%.
take away depression, and he can take away mental health problems and heal those things. I also think there's something to be said about persevering through hard things.
100%.
And the gift that our devotion to trusting God and learning to trust God, that can be such a gift to people who struggle with the same things. Like now we're on a podcast, and those things, I asked for that to be taken away. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm different today than I was before.
Yeah.
And same thing for you. You're here to share this testimony, and hopefully people will listen and identify with the places you've been and the place that you're heading and trying to go.
And I think we forget that, obviously, when we're in the middle of those hard things, they're hard. We don't want them, we don't want to be in the middle of those things. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. And it's, sometimes you physically don't feel good, or even with depression. I've had my own experiences with that. The way you feel physically is so weird, or you're going through a death in the family or whatever that is. Hard times suck. And so none of us want to go through that.
I heard someone say once, they said, in response to the statement, it'll get better someday. It's well, today it hurts.
Yeah.
And today it hurts really bad.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. I remember when I was, I think my first week postpartum, a couple days after I had Frankie, I just remember I cried every day. And I remember texting a friend and I was like, when will I feel better? And she's like, oh, about 2 weeks. And I was like, what? That's an eternity.
That's never.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's never going to come. I'm going to be sad forever.
That's so
and
funny.
It came and went, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
But, again, all of that to say, when you're in it, it feels never ending. It feels hopeless and all of those things. And so, but to go back to your persevering point, without God, I don't know how we could do it. And
it takes a lot of faith.
It takes a lot of faith, and what a testimony. All I want to do is live my life to glorify God. And if that means having anxiety to be able to tell people about what he did in my life, then great. I will be shaking around town all day, just being so anxious. If I get
shaking through town.
If I get to tell people about Jesus.
That's so funny. Well, Cady, is there anything else you want to talk about before we close this thing down?
I don't think so. I guess I hope and pray that the stigma of mental health is continuing to go away, and that people will be more willing to have those conversations, and that people are willing to talk to somebody who can be a safe person. And I also hope and pray that anybody can be a safe person at this point. I don't know how long it's been since I feel like the mental health conversations have been happening in the world, but I want people to know that it's okay. It's normal.
Yeah.
It might not feel normal,
right,
because it's
it
uncomfortable.
Feels isolating.
It does.
It feels
but talk
lonely.
to somebody.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is too, even just in this mental health series, is we do have options for that. And I wasn't told to plug this.
Go for it. Plug it.
Plugging the website with all of our resources, but we have counselor referrals on there, and that's an amazing resource. And it can take a while to find a good counselor and to get into their schedule, but it's the pastors on staff are here too. We want to help you. I'm sure any of us have been through these things, and if we haven't ourselves, I've been telling this to my volunteer team, if we haven't gone through it ourselves, we all know somebody that has. And I almost said this to them too, and it's well, if you don't know a crazy person, it's me. So there you go. I'll be that resident crazy person for you. So. And
I bet we'll even link those resources when we post this. That'll be linked, so you can go ahead and click on that. Well, we are Stonebridge Christian Church. I hope this is a blessing to you. I hope it's a gift, and I hope at the very least you know that you're not alone if this is something that you struggle with, because a lot of people are in the midst of this stuff, or have gone through this stuff, or will soon. So I encourage you to be strong. I encourage you to be strong for someone else if you're not in this place, and really be patient and gracious, because if you're not here today, you might be tomorrow, and the people that you're patient with can be patient for you too if you ever come to a place like this. Click on those resources, and I suppose we'll see you for the next podcast release. Take care.